in boxing, but I do think when you actually come up against a proper serious boxer, and I suspect that Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. may be that person, it could all come crashing down.
Is that you think that your opinion matters?
No, I don't think it's good. I think he train hard, but it's not good fighter.
It is. I think he's coming into this fight with the right approach, with the right mindset.
Boxing experts are predicting Jake Paul could get knocked out by Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. as early as the 5th round of their upcoming clash. Many believe Chavez Jr.'s experience, power, and ring IQ will simply overwhelm Jake and end things early for Jake. This is widely seen as his toughest test yet, facing a seasoned pro who's fought at levels Jake hasn't even sniffed.
So I've just interviewed your opponent, Julio, very confident, says he's going to knock you out in the 9th round.
Yeah, man, you know, he's a dumbass, and so it's gonna be apparent on Saturday when he's the one that gets knocked out.
When asked about Jake's skills, Chavez Jr. didn't hold back. He acknowledged Jake's work ethic in the gym, but made it clear, working hard is one thing, fighting at the highest level is another. For Julio, real boxing is about instincts, rhythm, and ring experience, things Jake hasn't truly proven under the bright lights against serious opposition.
But one thing I've gotten off him during this week is that he's viewing this fight as at least a pathway to some form of redemption. He's not going to get all his fans back. He's not going to redeem himself on the eyes of the fans of his father. But if he can beat Jake Paul and beat him convincingly, maybe don't think quite so much about quitting against Daniel Jacobs or against Fanfara or that terrible performance against Anderson Silva. Like, I think the point is, I think he's coming into this fight with the right approach, with the right mindset. I promise you, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is not just here for a payday. He is not just here to collect a check and to get whitewashed by Jake Paul over 10 rounds. He's coming to win. He may not win. Jake could turn out to be even better than maybe people generally think, but he's coming to win, and I think it's going to be a competitive fight.
Even media personality Piers Morgan chimed in on Jake Paul's so-called boxing journey. Morgan pointed out that Jake still hasn't faced a legitimate prime professional boxer. To him, Chavez Jr. is the test that's been missing, a technically sound fighter with the ring IQ to show whether Jake's the real deal, or just an expertly marketed hype job.
Shit, YouTube this, YouTube that, Disney that. This shit is not a joke. I'm knocking out the best of the best, beating all of these people time in and time again. And it's about time that you old heads and all these fucking boxers who think they know about the sport put some respect on my name.
Yeah, but you're not going to get, look, you're going to make a ton of money. Listen, I think as a businessman, you are brilliant, right? I give you full credit for that. When you took on Mike Tyson as a business enterprise, there's no argument. You absolutely crushed the numbers, crushed the money and everything else. But the idea that you can say on the one hand, I'm a killer, I get in the ring with the best people, and you get in the ring with a guy who's 50, he's literally nearly as old as me.
I'm not talking about Mike Tyson, I'm talking about Anderson Silva, Tyron Woodley, champions in their sport, Golden Gloves champions, Ryan Moreland, Andre August, undefeated fighters. The list goes
but what
on
great
and on.
boxer have you been in the ring
with? Former world champion on Saturday, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., son of the greatest Mexican fighter of all time, besides me, of course. Like, I don't know what you guys want to see. I tried to fight Canelo. He ducked out of it. You asked him about that. You said he's going to kill me. So what do you want? You're laughing when you say, oh, Jake is going to fight Canelo. I think you would kill him. But then you're like, oh, you're not fighting this guy. You're the problem here with this whole situation and criticism of my career. I'm trying to fight the best people, and that's why Chavez is here on Saturday. I want Canelo. I want Anthony Joshua. I want all these people. It's been 5 years in this sport.
But the problem is the only proper boxer you fought was Tommy Fury, and he beat you. And he's not even the best. He's not even the best fighter in his family.
Golden Gloves champion Andre August, Brian Borland as well. Anderson Silva was an undefeated boxer. I mean, you can sit there and make up shit, but you actually don't know your facts. I fought multiple boxers with professional records, and including Mike Tyson himself, who I think is going to be a harder fight than Chavez.
Veteran trainer Robert Garcia didn't sugarcoat it either. For him, Chavez Jr. doesn't need any special game plan, just show up. box smart, and the class gap will show. Julio's experience, natural talent, and tactical smarts make him a real threat for someone like Jake, who's never stepped in deep waters with a true pro in his prime.
I love that dude. He's cool. I love that dude. He's gonna win.
Okay, if he wins, what does it say?
Nothing. Chavez is gonna win.
What does that say if he beats Jake Paul?
Not much. Just a good win. A lot of millions of dollars, and then maybe do a rematch, which is bad. Make a lot of money.
Even the great Manny Pacquiao weighed in, and he didn't hesitate to pick Chavez Jr. Pacquiao, whose instincts built a Hall of Fame career, sees the gap in real fight experience as simply too big to ignore. If anyone knows what it takes to survive at the elite level, it's Manny.
Yeah.
But yeah. Asking about Jake Paul. Who do you got in the Jake Paul fight?
Jake Paul and Chavez. Julio. Viva Julio.
Viva Julio!
Julio.
Chat.
Julio's winning.
Oh,
That's
Manny's manager. He's putting it out there.
I'll see you Saturday night. Viva Julio.
Even the great Manny Pacquiao weighed in, and he didn't hesitate to pick Chavez Jr. Pacquiao, whose instincts built a Hall of Fame career, sees the gap in real fight experience as simply too big to ignore. If anyone knows what it takes to survive at the elite level, it's Manny.
But one thing I've gotten off him during this week is that he's viewing this fight as at least a pathway to some form of redemption. He's not going to get all his fans back. He's not going to redeem himself on the eyes of the fans of his father. But if he can beat Jake Paul and beat him convincingly, maybe don't think quite so much about quitting against Daniel Jacobs or against Fanfara or that terrible performance against Anderson Silva. Like, I think the point is, I think he's coming into this fight with the right approach, with the right mindset. I promise you, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is not just here for a payday. He is not just here to collect a check and to get whitewashed by Jake Paul over 10 rounds. He's coming to win. He may not win. Jake could turn out to be even better than maybe people generally think, but he's coming to win, and I think it's going to be a competitive fight.
Insiders say Chavez Jr. isn't walking into this fight banking on his famous name or faded glory. Despite critics expecting him to coast through a payday, Julio is locked in, training hard, and treating Jake like a real threat. Because in boxing, underestimate your opponent, and you pay the price.
I really don't know his habits. You know, he has a bad track record on, preparing. But look, man, if Chavez comes in at least 60%, then I think Jake really has a fight, because one thing that Chavez has is experience. He may not have the youth, and the agility that Jake has right now, but he does have the experience, and I think that experience will give Jake a problem.
I completely agree with you. I think this is an excellent fight for Jake Paul. Officially, he is 11-1, but he's really like 2-1 as a boxer.
Yeah.
He's fought Tommy Fury. He fought a couple of no-name cruiserweights. I guess if you want to throw Mike Perry into that list, you can say he's 3-1. But against guys that are traditional boxers, he's a 2-1 fighter.
Veteran fighter Gabe Rosado offered his perspective too. He says experience is often the deciding factor when the stakes are high. Jake might have youth and momentum, but Julio has lived championship rounds in brutal wars, battles that can't be faked or replicated in viral training montages or exhibitions.
He knows exactly what to do. Jake Paul just fought against Mike Tyson, who didn't even throw one punch. This is not Mike Tyson. You are gonna get your ass whooped.
No hay manera de que le gane Jake Paul.
There is no way Jake Paul can.
Esta preparación que hizo Julio, Jake Paul no la sabe, ¿entiendes?
This camp, Jake Paul doesn't know
va a salir a tirar chingazos y Jake Paul va a andar corriendo como gallina.
Julio's gonna go in throwing some serious punches, and you're gonna be running like a chicken without a head.
Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., a legend in his own right, didn't pull punches either. Speaking as a father and an icon, he warned Jake Paul that what's coming is nothing like anything Jake's faced before. For Chavez Sr., this isn't hype. His belief comes from seeing his son sacrifice and claw his way back into real fighting form.
Let's talk about this one here. This Saturday, June 28th, we've got Jake Paul. He's going to take on Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And I don't know if this is a real fight or if it's a fake one. So let's talk about this. All right, let's say this is a real fight because I don't know, I don't want to sound like a hater, but some of Jake Paul's fights look like they've been staged. So let's say this is a real fight. This is the real deal. Listen, man, Chavez Jr. has never been the greatest boxer out here. He's lacked in discipline, he's lacked in the sport, but nevertheless, he is a credible opponent. Jake Paul, on the other hand, I don't know, you know. Some of the fights look staged. Some of the knockouts look like the guys have been paid. With that being said, the problem child is taking on Chavez Jr. this weekend. Let's take a look at both men's professional record. Yes, I said professional record. Listen, box rec. This is Jake Paul's professional record. Alright, cool. Let's get into it. 11 wins, 7 coming via knockout, and 1 loss. Let's take a look at Jake Paul's actual professional record. So he's fought 3 professional boxers. 1 Tommy Fury, 1 Andre August, and 1 Ryan Berlin.
Still, plenty of fans and pundits are skeptical. Jake Paul built his record fighting aging athletes, influencers, and ex-MMA stars far removed from their prime. Some suspect this is just another carefully controlled spectacle. But if Julio shows up motivated, even out of form, he's a massive step up from anything Jake's dealt with so far.
I'm really excited because the only reason I got involved with this is because he's fighting a real fighter now. Julio Cesar Chavez went 12 rounds with Canelo. He is an ex-world champion in boxing. So this is a real legit fight. I'm looking forward to it. I'm obviously questioning what Chavez Jr. will we see. Will he be in great shape? Will he not be in shape? Will he make weight? Will he do a lot of questions behind it? But ultimately, you have to tell yourself, Jake Paul, congratulations. This is a real first legitimate world champion fighter you're fighting.
Oscar De La Hoya agrees, Tim. If Jake Paul really wants to be taken seriously, this is exactly the level of risk he needs. For once, Jake's facing an opponent with real experience, unpredictability, and the grit to test him. To Oscar, Chavez Jr. is Jake's first true gut check.
Canelo backed out and all that kind of stuff, but is this, another name that just, like I said, gives the detractors more feel for their fire? Does this help Jake at all?
I don't think it's really going to help him that much. I mean, it will in the sense that he fought a legitimate fighter that actually was a professional fighter and a world champion. But to get him after a 5-year layoff and him being inactive is almost just like fighting Mike Tyson.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the same thing. It's like an older guy past his prime who hasn't fought in a long time. I guess he doesn't have an MMA career behind him, so maybe that's a good thing, but it's a lot of the same thing that people have always complained about.
But I think this is a fight that Jake can win. I mean, legitimately win.
Yeah.
Jeff Mayweather, though, is more cautious. He says Chavez Jr. once had world-class skills, but questions how much is left. He sees the timing favoring Jake, not because Jake's better, but because Julio is years removed from his prime. For Jeff, this might be more about adding a former champ to Jake's resume than taking a real risk. On paper, it sounds dangerous, but the fight might tell another story.
How good is Jake Paul's next opponent, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.? Can he pull off the upset and beat Jake? Now, Chavez Jr. in his prime was a really solid fighter. 46-0, 4-time WBC middleweight champion. This is him against Sergio Martinez, a top 3 pound-for-pound fighter. Hurt him bad with the left hook, dropped him in the 12th round, nearly got the finish, but Martinez did end up winning this fight. And then after losing the title in 2017, this is him versus Canelo in 2017. Solid pressure fighter, good body shots, decent hand speed. But these are pretty much his only highlights in the fight, because he pretty much lost every round 12-0. But still, he did go the distance with Canelo. But then you get to his most recent fight versus Uriah Hall at cruiserweight. He still got some decent body shots, but he looks considerably slower fighting at a heavier weight class. His footwork is a bit plotty, and he's not as fast. Look, Chavez Jr., he's not a bad fighter. He's never been a bad fighter. But what he is very undisciplined and considerably slower and more flat-footed. At 39 years old fighting at cruiserweight, the technicality, the experience, it will give him a 25 to 30% chance. But the youth, the size, the speed of Jake, that'll give him more of the edge.
This fight has reignited an old debate. Does youth beat experience? Jake brings youth size and fresh conditioning. Julio brings timing, accuracy, and sharper technique. Many analysts believe Julio's hand speed, defensive craft, and ring control are on another level from anything Jake's faced. Jake may push the pace, but Julio's ring IQ could be the deciding factor.
Let's find a real boxer. This man's an ex-world champion. He's way smaller when he was competing.
Yeah.
He have to come up to my weight. He's the son of a legend. I'm now Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
He's Mexican. It's the best you could do. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
From a business standpoint, it's brilliant. You can't really do better than that if you're not trying to feed man to the wolves. But you're trying to make it appear so.
But do you reckon it's going to generate numbers?
Good question.
It depends how they market it.
It depends what Chavez comes on.
Yeah.
Because Jake won't be able to push this himself. It depends what Chavez comes on. If Chavez comes on some like, listen, bro,
Want to teach you boxing.
I'm gonna teach you boxing.
Yeah.
Then it can sell.
That type of energy.
But if he comes on the vibe we know he's on, which is why even his dad don't really mess with him.
One thing's certain, commercially, this fight is gold. Jake Paul is a marketing juggernaut. Chavez Jr. is a legacy name. Together, they hook old-school boxing fans curious about Julio's return, and younger audiences glued to Jake's influencer orbit. Win or lose, both stand to profit big at the box office and at the bank.
So Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who wins? Now this fight should really come down to two things. The youth of Jake versus the experience and technicality of Chavez Jr. Now Jake, he'll probably be the faster guy, carries more power at cruiserweight. I don't think he's got good footwork by any means, but Chavez Jr. does look more plotty at cruiserweight, considering he is a middleweight / super middleweight moving up in weight later in his career. Now Chavez Jr., I do think he does a lot of things better than Jake. Defensively, his hand positioning is better, his lead left hook is better, his combinations and body shots are a lot more technical, but ultimately it comes down to can he execute the way he used to. Because if you look at his last fight against Uriah Hall, he didn't throw as much volume as he used to. Like I said, looked a lot heavier on the feet. And this was a 6-round fight, so who knows how his cardio will hold up in a 10-rounder against Jake. But since Chavez Jr. is quite durable, he went 12 with Canelo, went 12 with Sergio Martinez, I do think Jake wins this one by decision, just being the more active guy on the front foot. But for Chavez Jr. having any chance to win, he's got to throw 2 to 3 times more punches than he did in his last couple of fights.
Breaking news, Jake Paul is going to be taking on former world champion Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. in a fight that I think is going to fool a lot of people. Now, what do I mean by fool a lot of people? What I mean is people are going to, on paper, look at this and be like, oh, Jake Paul gets schooled here, gets schooled here. Chavez Jr. is 39. He was not known as a very disciplined boxer during his prime. That's one of the reasons he had such a heavy decline. He's also a lot smaller than Jake Paul. What I will say about Jake Paul is he is a genius, or his team and management are geniuses at giving him opponents that people on paper look at and be like, oh, Jake Paul's not a real fighter, he won't be able to beat this guy. This is very, 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 very minimal risk for Jake Paul. The only factor that could come into play here is if Chavez Jr. decides he actually wants to show up properly for this fight, conditioned, and use his experience to win. But Jake Paul, for me and his team, have been very, very careful about who they matchmake him against ever since the Tommy Fury fight. Ever since here, we haven't seen him in there with someone his own age, his own weight, and his own sort of experience. For me, if Jake Paul wants to be a YouTube boxer still, and he wants to be considered an influencer boxer, matchmaking him against these guys that on paper, oh, this is a big challenge for Jake Paul, in reality, not really, is okay. But I think if Jake Paul actually is what he says he wants to be, and he wants to make that step up, man, he's going to have to take risks.
But not everyone's sold. Some say Jake Paul still isn't a real fighter. That he can't beat someone like Chavez Jr. The real risk, they say, is minimal unless Julio shows up in shape and motivated. Since losing to Tommy Fury, Jake's matchmaking has been careful, avoiding fighters his age, size, and skill level. If Jake really wants to ditch the YouTube boxer tag, he'll have to take real risks. Not just paper ones that look big but feel safe.